Welcome back, everyone. We've just got the Warcraft Direct, and that means we've got plenty to talk about. There is what Blizzard have overtly said, but there's also some neat stuff from the press kit, along with a few mysteries. Patch 11.2 looks to be different from most major patches, like it could even try to fix up some of the larger critiques that people have got of World of Warcraft. Patch 11.1.5 is bringing back one of my favorite all-time game features, and there's the small matter of player housing, along with dates for all of this content right through to midnight, and whatever the hell that strange icon is at the very end of the roadmap, and just why the bar turns green. Let's get into it. Patch 11.1 brings us to Undermined, which is the Goblin home city, and when we go there, we basically get a big old zone that's got 4 different Goblin cartels, which will have a renown, which maybe will be similar to the Severed Threads, and looking around, yes, you do see big wacky Goblin energy, which some people are very much for, some less for, but there is some good news, because looking through the press kit, we do see that there are these black blood-infested Titan ruins. Gorgeous is absolutely not the word, because it's all disgusting, but I think it looks really cool. So it's more than just goblins, and Blizzard did emphasize that this is very much connected to Xal'atath, which does make sense to me. First of all, we saw the void-wielding black-fused goblins in the Ringing Deeps. Secondly, we've got Gallywix. The last time we saw Gallywix, he was actually making deals in Tazavesh. That was, suspicious to say the very least, and at that point it seemed like he wouldn't have had anything to do with Sylvanas or like the rest of the Shadowlands storyline. So I think it's fairly easy to see how Xal'atath could be related to him there, and this all makes sense because he is our end boss, the end boss of the new 8-boss raid, which is the Liberation of Undermined. It seems like we fight through the streets and then we basically take down his mansion, which honestly looks kinda sick. Plus, mechanically, I can actually see goblins leading to real fun fight designs. But for me, the most exciting feature is Drive, which seems to be Blizzard testing dynamic ground mounts, okay? Which, man, that could be big. Basically, we get a customizable goblin car, a little bit like the Delver's dirigible, but it's got unique gameplay, and if you're thinking of Vin Diesel and his family, well, yeah, you're basically right in the mark. First up, this can go 4 to 5 times faster than current ground mounts, which is kind of crazy. Second, it's customizable, right? It's customizable as a car, so you can go for like more acceleration, more top speed, change the handling, which does mean you can drift. You can drift in World of Warcraft, and Undermined is like full of motorways and stuff that you can drive on. I can't overstate how important I think this might be if it works. Dynamic flight has, I think, just been foundationally good for World of Warcraft. I even do things like fly around the place mining now, and I didn't in the past because I just hated the static flight. I mean, I didn't know I hated it, but it was just boring. It's way more engaging like this. So, if this is Blizzard building the foundational technologies they need to do similar with ground mounts, well, that would be pretty damn fantastic. And hey, I guess we could get World of Warcraft. Anyway, the next thing to talk about is seasonal content, and there's actually good news here. First up, we're getting a new dungeon in this patch, and overall, it does seem they're not doing mega dungeons anymore. Instead, 11.1 and 11.2 will just have their own dungeons, which I actually think is fair enough as a compromise. Whenever they did the mega dungeon in Dragonflight, it was cool, but I think Blizzard really struggled to thread the narrative needle there, and things just felt a bit disjointed. At least here it means that every season will actually mean there is a full new dungeon, and that means that our dungeons are going to be Cinderbrew Meadery, the Darkflame Cleft, the Rookery, Priory of the Sacred Flame, the Motherlode, the new dungeon, which is Operation Floodgate, and then 2 returning ones. Now, I know there's a lot of community discourse about the state of Mythic Plus. I don't think that's something that they would have ever been able to address in a video like this because it's in flux, but at least personally, I would expect substantial Mythic Plus changes because it's clear the way things are right now is really not working for everybody. The other thing we've seen is our first look at how delves are going to be treated as we move between seasons. There are going to be 2 new delves, as well as new variations of existing delves, seasonal updates to Bran, and then a new Zekvir-like antagonist. And then finally, something that we all saw coming, Warband Camp Collections, which basically is just different Warband login screens, so different ways to place your character, different locations for them, which I think would be really cool. We've got no specifics on this, but I would expect it to be different backgrounds depending on content completion. I don't know exactly, but maybe if you've done a zone meta achievement, you can put your camp in that zone. That's just one idea. But okay, with that said, let's get into the future, which is actually way more interesting than I thought, and at least for the near term, doubly so if you've watched this video, which is on early access over at Bellular.games right now. That's our site. It's where our members get a ton of exclusive content, dozens of hours of the Lore Walking podcast, podcast, early access to our videos, lore deep dives, and much more. And you can start it with a free trial today, and it's also the single best way that you can support my team's mission. With that said, let's talk about Nightfall. Patch 11.1.5 has got new content Nightfall and Horrific Visions revisited on its roadmap, and that's actually kind of big. First of all, we don't exactly know what Nightfall is, but we can do a little bit of detective work. So Nightfall Sanctum is one of the delves in Hallowfall, and in it we find loads of Order of the Night members. And their whole shtick is trying to turn Bellular permanently dark. So it seems that whatever Nightfall is, it's basically related to Bellular. Again, we don't exactly know, but it is labeled as new content, just like how the Siren Isles has been labeled as new content, which makes me suspect that it'll be some form of fairly substantial world content taking place in Hallowfall. The next thing then is Horrific Visions. These were a headline feature of patch 8.3, and honestly, they were bloody fantastic. I loved this feature. So there were two maps, right? Stormwind and Orgrimmar, and the theme was that basically it was old god corruption. It was like a terrible vision of the future, and you would have to go in and try to progress as much as you could. You had a sanity meter that would dwindle over time, and it would also decrease if you were hit by mechanics, but you did have tools to combat your dwindling sanity. Now, each subzone within those two maps had different objectives. They had bosses like Illyria, Terralion, Thrall, etc. And you would just try to go as far as you could, and the more bosses you cleared, the better rewards you got at the end. It had a surprising amount of gameplay depth. It was properly, it was damn intense. It felt properly like a game within a game, like a little roguelite thing. It was awesome when played solo, and it also had extra difficulty in the form of masks, which you could basically unlock and activate. They worked just like skulls in Halo, where it was an optional form of difficulty. This is really cool. Blizzard bringing it back is exciting, especially when it's free from the rest of BFA, and you may be wondering, why the hell would you do this? Well, that's why you should watch our lore videos, like the one on Bellular.games right now, and that's because of the blood. Okay, so in a Hallowfall side quest that we cover in that video, an Abyss Whisperer says, "They are gone, but their blood remains. The blood remembers." Now that's Old God blood. This was a deeply Old God feature in patch 8.3, so it basically seems that's how they're going to be bringing this back. Now Blizzard also will be updating Children's Week, and that does mean that this patch will release before the end of April 2025. Patch 11.1.7 is less defined, but does seem to be the usual, having story and quests, new content and systems updates, plus turbulent timeways. But really, it's patch 11.2 that actually looks different. We have a few hints that patch 11.2 is going to be shaking things up. So Blizzard initially forgot to put New Zone on the roadmap image, but the good news is they've updated the image and there is going to be a new zone. But what caught my eye is this. They note new open world challenges, and that absolutely gets me thinking. You see, with the Siren Isle, fan responses were pretty damn mild, and it's fair to say that WoW's new zones have kind of got stale. Like, there's some sort of event, there's rares, there's maybe a few currencies, small points of differentiation, but by and large they feel the same. Upon logging into Zarlek or Emerald Dream, you definitely felt bored within a few hours, so if they're going to be shaking something up there, I think that would be pretty good. In terms of the new zone, I've got to imagine it'll be the Rootlands. That's because of the Harnir storyline, which is being picked up in patch 11.07. As for the other things, well, there's Warband updates, Brewfest updates, a new raid, new dungeon, no confirmation of delves, but I would expect more delves, but then there's something properly telling. Season rewards refresh. And that just gets me to the topic of World of Warcraft seasons. They are a little bit strange. I mean, you get a rush of gear, there's the upgrades and stuff, but then there's not really that much. I mean, some dungeon people want to push keys to get a higher rating. There's ahead of the curve if you're a raider. There's the sheer thrill of getting a recolored Keystone Master mount, which I don't think really motivates anybody. So I imagine this is Blizzard taking a stab at trying to modernize what a season is. And I think we can take a look at delves, actually, because if you look at the Delver's Journey, well, there's a bar that you fill along with a bunch of cosmetics. Now, I think its first iteration has been pretty underwhelming, but if Blizzard are going to use patch 11.2 to rework how seasonal progress and rewards work in the game, that makes perfect sense, especially because they will be doing the V1 of a major systems iteration in the final patch of this expansion, which would give them time to do a full design pass of it based on player feedback, real-world feedback, before Midnight ships. That would make a lot of sense to me. And again, as this contains Brewfest updates, we can expect this to be late August or early September at the latest. That's actually pretty similar to Season 1 of the War Within's launch, and that means that the patch 11.25 and 11.27 timings would be similar to 11.05 and 11.07, which leaves me with 4 things: the reveal of Midnight, player housing, the strange logo at the end, and the curiously green bar. Midnight's reveal is set for late summer, which can only mean one thing, I think anyway: Gamescom 2025, because that is late August. Now, we've also had the teasing of player housing. There's zero info on it yet, but just taking a look at the teaser video, it's hinting at player customizable like wall items, trophy items like an Ixia's head, being able to put weapons that you own up on the wall, and a focus that seems to be on like rewards and self-expression rather than, say, garrisons. And then that got me thinking about the strange logo in the green bar. First, if you zoom in really close to this strange logo that's appeared, you get a hint. It's the Northwest Broken Isles. That's a bit weird. It would mean that our icon is actually placed on Northrend, though that may just be nothing. Hard to say exactly. But if you look closer at the icon, it clearly looks like a house. The middle of it, like the middle bottom, looks like the front door of a house. I think that's pretty clear. And the other part of it is clearly designed like after a Hearthstone. It basically looks like the Hearthstone swirl, but looking like a house. And that has got me thinking of an amazing way to make the line go up for Blizzard. And that would be the mother of all pre-order bonuses, that if you pre-order the Midnight expansion, you will get early access to the player housing feature. That would make a lot of sense to me, because player housing is a Midnight expansion feature, but that doesn't mean they can't sell it as a pre-order thing. I mean, they did similar with Allied Races at the end of the Legion expansion, so my theory's pretty simple. Player housing releasing before Midnight, ideally with associated rewards across the game, across, say, Khazalgar, and just War Within content. That would be a hell of a way to get people engaged in the game, and as for player housing itself, look, it is one of my all-time top requested features, and that's not because I'm a role player. I'm not a role player. Basically, I think World of Warcraft has got a big reward problem. Mounts aren't exciting anymore. We're drowning in transmogs. Most people don't care about battle pets, don't care about tabards. The same goes for toys. Right, Blizzard have ran out of ways to reward players. Housing, though, gives Blizzard an entire other way to reward people. Loads and loads of different things, and I don't think it's some sort of big fix to all of WoW's problems, but I do think it could be really big. So that brings me to the final mystery, the green bar. Now, green was the color of the Legion expansion, and looking at its texture and thinking about the past, I think it's bloody obvious. Legion Remix. I mean, Mop Remix was a huge success, it seems, and if there's any expansion that I think inherently suits the Remix format, it's gotta be Legion. I mean, imagine what they would be doing with artifact progression. The raids and the dungeons were absolutely peak in that expansion, and for many people, Legion was one of World of Warcraft's best ever expansions. So there'd be no better way to pump up interest ahead of Midnight than Legion Remix. I mean, there's also all the elf stuff, which would tie into Midnight as well. Especially so if the player housing theory is correct and Legion Remix can have a few centerpiece rewards for that feature. Okay, let's get into the timeline and roughly give you patch dates to put all of this in your calendar. Okay, the big thing first. I expect Midnight to release late February 2026. That would be 18 months after The War Within came out. I think that makes perfect sense given their expansion cadence for the World Soul Saga, and an August 2025 reveal would give them more than enough time for alpha and beta testing. Also, Blizzard's roadmap even suggests they're a little ahead of schedule. 11.25 and 11.27 are both within autumn, which would be a little bit faster than what we're getting today with patch 11.07, which is releasing December 17th. Now, that December 17th does show that Blizzard have held their 8-week cadence. 8 weeks after 11.07 would be February 11th, but let's just give them like 2 weeks of breathing room for Christmas and New Year's, and that would bring 11.1 to February 25th. Now, 8 weeks after that would be April 22nd, which is just in time for 11.1.5's Children's Week update, at least based on the prior timings. That would then put 11.17 being June 17th and 11.2 being August 12th. That is perfect timing because Gamescom 2025 is August 20th to 24th, so we'd basically have just under a fortnight of patch 11.2, then the Midnight reveal. Now, 8 weeks after 11.2 would bring us to October 7th, 2025. 8 weeks after that would be December 2nd, 2025. And that would be the end of the roadmap, at least in terms of patches. There does, of course, seem to be whatever the hell that strange icon at the end is. Most immediately, though, we're going to have 11.07. That's 33 days from the publication of this video. It brings the Siren Isle, Cersei Circlet, the Haranir story stuff, Dalaran Epilogue, Winter's Veil updates, more holiday updates as well, which presumably would be Lunar Festival, as well as, per data mining that's happened, vendor refreshes for even more time walking vendors, which would be right in time for the Turbulent Timeways event. And then, big important to me, another Plunder Storm. I cannot wait for that. It's going to be queuable in-game with your real characters, and it's going to have a proper currency-based reward, not a renown track. So if last time is anything to go by, I'm going to lose dozens of hours. I'm really not joking. I finished Plunder Storm with about 450,000 plunder, which was 4 times more than the reward track even allowed you for. Anyway, as for the other stuff, there's Warcraft 3 Reforged 2.0 that looks neat, but what's real cool for me is Warcraft 1 and 2 Remastered. I think they look absolutely gorgeous, and they've got an increased field of view and loads of modern quality of life features, which will be big for playability. That's pretty much that, so let's round it off with Classic, which has actually had plenty. Next month gets fresh era and hardcore servers with no GDKP. We've got MoP Classic being unveiled, which is actually pretty damn big hype. I cannot wait to go and do Throne of Thunder as it's properly intended. And then Season of Discovery has got even more content, seemingly a Scarlet Raid, which, look, I'm too far behind, but yeah, hell yeah, I want more of that. Anyway, that's basically what's up for the next 18 months of World of Warcraft. And you know what I think was a really, really strong showing. And if you want to get some lore knowledge that will make all of that Bellular stuff hit way harder, check out this video that we published about 2 weeks ago. It's diving deep into the Bellular lore. It was so much fun to put together. So yeah, go watch that next. I'll see you over there. Have a great day.